There was a period of time, as of right now, just over a decade ago, where there were career opportunities that I had. There were speaking engagements that I had. There were invitations. I just sold my startup, and there were a lot of doors that were opening. And I also was a stay-at-home dad, while my partner at the time worked a traditional job outside the house. I was leading the ship with our two sons. One was a baby, the other one was just out of toddlerhood. And so choices had to be made, but they were my choices. I ended up having a wonderful career, still do, end up being the foundation of me talking to you today. But I think the difference is that it was a conscious choice. It wasn't, I have to do this. It wasn't, I'm being made to do this. It wasn't, I deserve something. Being so connected to my kids was a reward in itself. And that was based on the set of priorities that I had and have, still have, even though my kids are older. My point is this: there's going to be times where you're going to have to decide what your real priority is. There's going to be times where you're going to have two things in conflict because you can't be two places at once, even with all the technology in the world, no matter how smooth you are with it. So you're going to have to make trade offs. When you make those trade offs, make them based on your true principles. Otherwise, if you end up making those trade offs, then you'll be stuck in this what if cycle. What if I did this? What if I did that? There are major opportunities that I had to say no to because my family needed me. But my family priority at that time and still was above all else. But you have to know what your priorities are. If you know what your priorities are, then you can stick with them. If you stick with them, then you're able to not have as many regrets, if any. But it has to be a conscious trade off. It can't just be something that you feel like you have to do. But to understand that, you got to know your principles. If you haven't figured it out, what hill are you willing to die on? If you don't know that, how can you make good decisions and good trade-offs? We often say we want to have good relationships, or if it's New Year's, this upcoming year, I'm going to have better relationships. But there's actually two different types of relationships. You can improve both of them, but you have to know what you're getting into. There's transactional, and then there's relational relationships. Transactional is you go into the store, you pay the cashier a certain amount of money, and then you're able to take the goods home. That's transactional, literally a transaction. There's no emotions involved, usually not, at least, and it's just back and forth. I have this something that you need, you have something that I need, we're going to trade. That's transactional. That also means that the bond is over as soon as the transaction is done. Then there's relational relationships. Those are the things that we're more likely to have with our friends, our family, chosen or otherwise, with people that we want to have continual rapport with. That means sometimes I'm pouring into you. That means sometimes you're pouring into me. And we're not keeping score. I think we tend to get confused when we mix up the two. If we feel like everything is transactional, then we're not going to build bonds. Even with I'm an entrepreneur, so even with the customers that we serve, if everything is transactional, then why would they get involved in your next thing? Because they might not believe that you're trying to build community, or that you want something deeper than just their bucks or their attention or their time. Now, the other direction is also just as dangerous. If you believe everything is relational, again, the cashier at the bodega down the street, respectfully, their main thing is transactional. Now, if you happen to have a deeper relationship with them, as I've had with some of the people that I support within the greater economy, like I have a favorite coffee brewer called Saigon Coffee. I talk about them all the time. We're transactional, but we have a better relationship because they know my family literally. I used to live in San Diego and all these other things. So there's a different level to that. But I never make the mistake, and nor should you, of confusing the two. if you treat your your transactional relationships as relational, then you might feel like there's a bigger bond than there actually is, and you're not going to make good business decisions. It just gets really confusing. I've been there. Trust me on that. However, if you actually treat your relational relationships like they're transactional, then you should not expect people to be there for you unless there's something in it for them, because that is a dynamic that you set up. So I'm a business coach, and I have a lot of conversations with creators, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. And one of the things that comes up a lot is this fear of stopping. Stopping doesn't mean that you're quitting. It doesn't mean it's over. In fact, it has a whole bevy of benefits, from being more objective about it to getting the rest that you need. But our fear from talking to so many folks of stopping comes from usually one or two different places. The first thing is that we're actually afraid that if we stop, then we'll realize how difficult it is, and then we won't get back up. The second fear is that once we go ahead and stop, we'll actually recognize that maybe our idea isn't worth it. And third, we're afraid of the judgment that comes from when we stop. The thing is that if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a creator, if you're doing something for the long haul, I mean, you see yourself passing it down to your next generation, or you see yourself being creating whatever you're creating until the day you die or until you retire. If you're like me, a lot of stuff that I'm doing, I don't see an end in sight in the best way possible. If that's the case, there's no way you're going to make it grinding it out every single day. Mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually, if you swing that way. So, if you're going to stay in the game and you're serious, if you use the language of, hey, my legacy this, my legacy that, I'm going to do this forever, I'm always going to be in the game. Even your favorite athletes sit on the bench sometimes. What makes you any different? And when they get off the bench, they're ready to go. And by sitting on the bench, they prevent those injuries that often happen when we go too far, too hard, for too long.